I've been buying crypto, Bitcoin and altcoins, and in this video I'm going to show you exactly which coins I've been buying. But why have I been buying now? Well, I personally believe that Bitcoin bottomed around a month ago, and the altcoins have bottomed against Bitcoin back last year. You see, right now, I believe that we have some of the best risk to reward conditions that I've personally seen since late 2022, when I bought Solana at around $8, before it went to $295. When I bought Ethereum for $1,200, when I bought Bitcoin at around $17,000. And we know what happened to those two. So in this video, I'm going to break down exactly what I've been buying and why I've been buying it, to hopefully make some of the biggest gains over the months and years ahead. Do me a favor, hit the like button, and let's get into today's video. Now guys, I know many people will be out there right now being like, why on earth would you buy now? We're going to see more lows and whatever else. But if you've been subscribed to my channel over the past month or so or more, then you may have seen these before, but I think it's important to check them out. You see, this one is Bitcoin on the 2-week chart with the production cost below. How much it costs to mine a Bitcoin on any given day. And as you can see, over the last 8 years or so, this goes back to 2017, the price of Bitcoin has only ever spent 2 or 3 weeks at the very most under this purple line. And it's only done that 2 times in the past 8 years. And right now, the production cost of Bitcoin sits at around $60,400, meaning that the Bitcoin price has already touched this line one time before, back in early February. And that tells me that Bitcoin right now is either at the bottom, has been at the bottom, or is very damn close to being at the bottom. If you go to the line below, you can see this is the relative strength index. And as you can see right now, we are recovering from a position where the relative strength of Bitcoin hasn't touched since back when the FTX collapse happened. It didn't even get this low back in COVID. It did come down to this point back in December of 2018. You've probably also seen me talking about how tech stocks and crypto are very closely linked. You can see on top the IGV, which is an iShares tech stocks bundle, and how very closely correlated it is to the Bitcoin price. Right now, you can see it has bounced very strongly, and you can see massive amounts of accumulation have been going on over the past few weeks in this particular zone. Now, tech stocks and crypto move very closely together because they are both driven by the same things: liquidity, and they're both driven when we see good risk on conditions. If we see risk on conditions and liquidity returning, guess what? These will both go up. They're also invested in by the same people, the same kind of VCs, the same institutions, the same hedge funds who invest in tech stocks also invest in crypto. When this one on top bounces like this, we can expect to see crypto doing better. On top of that, we already know that we have seen 3 major capitulation events where we have seen leveraged traders washed out the market multiple times. On top of that, we have seen some of the largest spot trading realized losses that we have seen in years. That typically means that most people have sold at a loss. Most people have panic sold and got out the market. And that's why over the past couple of weeks, where we've seen war in the Middle East turning into something much bigger, we've seen oil prices surging, the biggest increase in a single day in a very long period of time. Crypto, if anything, has gone a little bit up during that period of time. That's because anyone who wanted to sell, anyone who wanted to panic and get out the markets already did that. I believe the bottom for Bitcoin is either in or has been very damn close to being in. And that's talking about Bitcoin. But what about the altcoins? Because altcoins have had a really tough time over the past few years, with the exception of just a few. Well, if we look at this chart, which is the others versus Bitcoin, which is the altcoins outside the top 10 against Bitcoin, you can see the altcoins basically bottomed against Bitcoin back last year. This was June 2025, where we saw that low. We then went back down to around the 10-10 event with that massive swing low here. We then put in another low around kind of early January. And right now we're starting to push up against this top resistance line of this descending wedge. One of the more bullish patterns out there. Now, if Bitcoin seemingly is close enough to a bottom, and that these are the altcoins stacking up against Bitcoin, and they're currently running into a resistance line up here ready to push higher, that to me tells me that we have a reasonable entry here. So whether you think the bottom is in or not, or we have to follow a calendar or whatever else you've heard, you just need to zoom out and look at a chart from the last bull market. Was it a good idea to be buying into Bitcoin somewhere around June of 2022? Well, knowing what happened after, you would have to say yes, even though it did go a little bit lower into November. But what about Ethereum? In June, went all the way down to around $900, and then later on in the year put in a higher low, meaning that actually buying back in June would have been the better choice. Again, Solana, lows here, but then went lower later on in the year. Effectively, it doesn't really matter, because if you bought Solana in and around this zone, you probably would have been damn happy. I know I was when I got into Solana somewhere around late December, when I made this video talking about buying Solana at $8.70, where I basically got called an idiot by every single person in the comments. Lo and behold, from $8.70, it went up 34x. Now, even if I didn't get in at that point and I got in earlier on, I still would have been happy with the returns that I was getting back then. But it's up to you. You need to really go and understand for yourself whether or not this is the time to be getting in the market or getting out the market. And before we jump into the coins and things that I personally have been buying, I just want to refer you back to the disclaimer that I made at the start of the video. You see, I don't make that disclaimer for any legal reason or whatever, okay? I make it so that you understand the importance of a few key things that I'm talking about. You see, I tell you that you need to do your own research, and that's not to protect me, that's to protect you, so that if you get any chop and turbulence in the market, you're not suddenly going to rush back and be like, oh, I need to sell this because I bought it, it went down 10%, and I wasn't really sure what I bought. Doesn't seem like a good idea. If you understand what you've been buying, a little 10 or 20 or 30 or 40% drop doesn't necessarily scare you out. Because, for example, people buying Solana here were probably still happy to hold even though it dumped 77% in just a couple of weeks. Because they knew that Solana was building a huge ecosystem. They knew behind the scenes, meme coins and everything else was going to be starting to be built upon Solana. We saw NFTs growing big on Solana, and that partly led to this massive surge that we saw before. On top of doing your own research, I talk about not using money that you can't afford to lose. And here's the reason behind that. If you put in next year's rent or your mortgage or whatever else to try and make a little bit more, and then the price crashes 20 or 30%, you are forced to sell. You have to sell because you can't afford to lose the rest of that money. But if you put in a few $100 or whatever, and then you drop 20%, you can probably just not pay attention to it and come back to it another day. So you got to make your own decisions on this based off your research. That's all I do. That's all I'm sharing with you right now. Right, rambling over. What have I bought? Well, I told you in the introduction that I'd bought some Bitcoin. Now, as you know, over the past few years, I haven't invested hugely into Bitcoin, apart from like back in 2022. Okay, and there's a reason for that. I don't think it's necessarily the most volatile. It doesn't necessarily give me the biggest ROI. But obviously, you know, altcoins have had a bit of a tough run over the past few years, and Bitcoin stays fairly steady. We know when markets go up, Bitcoin goes up first. But it's not going to go up particularly significant amounts. But if the market does come down, it doesn't come down dramatically. It's a kind of a calm, easier one to hold. So I've been picking up a bit of Bitcoin. Also, I've been holding some Bitcoin because later on in the cycle, I want to take some money from Bitcoin and move it to some of the lower market cap, riskier stuff. But as you know, Bitcoin runs first, large caps tend to run with it, and then we start to see the smaller caps when we see confidence returning to the market. Right now, we're in extreme fear, not extreme greed. Stay away from aping into smaller caps right now, in my opinion. And in the future, I will tell you when I start to make those transitions towards smaller caps, like I did back in late 2024. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel so that you can catch up and follow when we are doing that, because there will come a time when that happens again. So Bitcoin, the obvious one there. Now, many people out there will tell you that right now you could throw a dartboard at the crypto market and you could pick a winner that's going to make some gains over the next few years. Other people out there will tell you that altcoins will never run again, these altcoins will never live. And personally, I don't believe either of these ideas to be fully accurate, because the altcoin market right now is massive. Not every altcoin will run again, I promise you. But at the same time, it's pretty evident that as soon as Bitcoin finds a little bottom here and then pushes higher like it's done over the past few weeks, altcoins suddenly start to grow again. They always do whenever the market starts to warm up. So the job is simply this. You must find altcoins that have a high probability of running strongly again. And really, it's very easy to identify that, because as soon as the markets have started to look strong over the last few weeks, several altcoins have identified themselves as these strong runners. Now, there is, of course, the kind of the blue chip altcoins. The Ethereums, the Solanas, the XRPs, the ADAs, the Chainlinks. These altcoins inevitably will tend to go up when the market goes up. Why? Well, because they all have big, strong communities. They also have been around as OGs for several cycles. Everybody out there, whether they're actively involved in crypto or not, tends to know about these projects. So as soon as we see strength returning to the market, these projects tend to go up. I personally have bought a little bit of Ethereum and also back into Solana. Why? Ethereum is kind of like the Microsoft of crypto. Lots of things are being built on Ethereum. It's still the biggest ecosystem. Yes, it's slow. Yes, it's got all these other issues with it. But really, fundamentally, it tends to run quite strongly whenever the market conditions move in the right direction. It's also a fairly safe bet, being fairly low down in the cycle right now. Solana, one that I made a lot of money on in the last bull market, also I see gaining a lot of strength. I think that meme coins will return at some point in the future because once greed returns to the market, people just can't help themselves. I do believe that we're going to see AI agents rise again and lots of other things, and mostly that tends to be built on Solana. When it comes to Cardano, when it comes to XRP, you know that there's lots of people who are very passionate about these. People have ideas about them being the future of the financial system. It was shown on The Simpsons once upon a time that XRP is going to take over the world. Whatever you want to believe, okay? These large cap altcoins will run. Many of them have the ability to do a 3x, maybe a 5x into better conditions, where liquidity is flowing into the markets more, where we see better risk on conditions. Now, what about all the other coins out there? Because 3 to 5x doesn't sound amazing, okay? I get it. Where do we find kind of bigger growth potential? Well, you're not going to find it in those ones, and there's a reason for that. When the market goes down, those coins, many of them still have ETFs attached to them. Many of them have got long-term holders. They've all got big market caps. They don't tend to go down to rock bottom prices. You need to find coins that go down to rock bottom prices that you know time in, time again will tend to return. So how do we know what those are going to be? Well, those projects simply have one thing, maybe two things. Community a bit, but also money. If a project has money, there is a good, strong chance that that project can return to being a good top performing coin. And projects out there have money for one of two different reasons, or maybe both reasons. Either they have made lots of money from their token launch and trading of their own token through market makers, or they have made loads of money in revenue, or potentially both. And here's what you need to know. I'm just going to put up a Render chart here. Now, Render is a very interesting project. It's a deep-in project where they do decentralized compute. They also do decentralized rendering services for movies, games, and things like that. Very interesting project to look into. It's also a big firm favorite with many investors out there who really like what Render's doing. Now, actually, people seem to like Render because it went up a lot over the past few years, but many people hated Render back in 2022. You see, Render launched into bull market toppy area back in November 2021, and like any project that launches into the top of a bull market, it will get wrecked. But during this time, Render was able to make a lot of money. Now, a lot of the projects that launched back in 2022 made a lot of money, okay? Render's one, AOS is another, Nosana, Gala Games, etc. Now, many of them made tons of money because that was when we had full-blown liquidity. There wasn't too many tokens around. Projects did really, really well during this period of time. This is AOS, for example. Now, after that, AOS fell around 96.5%. Now, many of you are holding altcoins right now and you're in 96%, 98% down. You're feeling the pain. I understand. But just as an example, this is what AOS did after falling 96%. It went up 114x in the space of about 8 weeks. It then came down, then did a similarly strong move. And here's how it was able to do it. They made money here. Token dies off completely. AOS themselves, as a team, I would imagine, started to buy back their token aggressively. Okay, if you make millions and millions of dollars here, your token falls to being like a 10 mil market cap, you can buy up pretty much all the token supply, which is very, very good because it means that you can control supply and you can start to push price back up. Now, as you push price back up, guess what you do? You start to sell a lot of the tokens that you invested in down here, making yourself millions and millions and millions of dollars. Okay, whenever the market turns greedy, you can make yourself millions and millions of dollars again. Okay, right now you can see the price absolutely tanked. We're down in this zone. What I imagine to happen whenever we start to see greed return to the market is a coin like AOS to start to run again. Rinse and repeat. Okay, a lot of the projects that launched back in 2021 big name, kind of deep in projects will be able to do this. Yes, they're also cool projects that are doing interesting things. Render, for example, makes itself something like $8 million per year in revenue, which is fairly rare across crypto, but I would imagine that Render will do well when the market returns to strength again. If you look down to a slightly smaller chart here, you can see on the daily, we had a bit of time back in late December where crypto ran, Render went up 115% in like a week. No questions asked, okay? Market sells off again, then we just have to wait a little bit longer, okay? Bit of a no-brainer. Render, AOS, a lot of these projects tend to come back very strongly, and some of them just do absolutely crazy things, okay? This is Nosana. It was completely dead, right? It fell like 96%, 99%, okay? And then out of nowhere, it ran all the way up 500x, okay? Bonkers. Now, these are very, very tricky to find. But if you want to kind of find a one that you can fairly confidently, in my opinion, of course, do your own research and yada, 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 do this again. Render, probably a bit of a no-brainer. AOS. Now, I've personally added a little tiny bit of Render here and a little bit of AOS, but nothing crazy. Now, these projects have made money back at the end of 2021. Okay, and there's a few of them about. Go and look at top performers back in 2021. I would, however, say that Gala Games is probably not the one, because Gala Games pretty much disbanded as a project. The two founders no longer talk to each other. They don't have an office. Nothing going on with that one. There's obviously another few out there that might not do very exciting things. But the ones I've started to focus more attention to are the ones that have launched in the past couple of years. Why? Because when the market starts to heat up again, some of these could well be the top performing tokens over the next few years. And not only that, many of them have sold off very aggressively. They've sold off very aggressively because they only have very new communities. If new communities come in and a market cap gets wrecked, they tend to sell very quickly, pushing price down very aggressively. But that means that companies can accumulate their tokens. Now, this is where the most important part comes in. You must be able to identify a project that can afford to buy its own tokens back versus one that is begging other people to buy tokens, okay? Because if you can't afford to buy your tokens back and your token's dead, you're not coming back, okay? Because you can't get marketing, you can't get market making, pushing prices back up, you can't do anything, okay? So there are dead tokens out there you need to identify for yourself. But if you can find tokens that have been absolutely smashed recently that also have the ability to generate revenue, then you're going to be looking for some good times. So how do we do that? Well, if you jump across to DeFiLlama.com, then you can start to look at a few different things and you can understand a little bit more about some of the projects that I personally been investing in. By the way, I'm just going to take this opportunity to tell you, if I don't talk about projects that you personally invested in, it doesn't mean that your project is a bad one. It doesn't make me necessarily an idiot because I haven't invested in your project. Maybe it does, but ultimately there is a lot of tokens out there. I'm simply showing you just a few different examples along the way. If you want to go and buy them, be my guest. If you don't, that's also absolutely fine. And if you want to buy them, then you can head across to BTCC, which is linked down below in the description, because they offer a 10% bonus on first-time deposits, meaning that you can go and buy an extra 10% of whatever tokens you want right now for the same money. Now, also, they have a lot of other cool stuff, like they don't require KYCs and VPNs, which is obviously a very cool thing if you're like me and you're traveling around the world a lot and you want to be able to access crypto from wherever you are. They also have various different significant bonuses and trading fees available. If you're a trader, this is definitely a place that you want to check out. Now, also, for a short time only, they are offering the ability to make up to $30,000 in rewards. Simply, you just have to do various different things like register, carry out your first trade, copy trade, different bits and pieces like this. This is something I did back in the last bull market when I only had a couple of $100 to my name. I managed to gather significantly bigger portfolio at lows by carrying out lots of different tasks like this. So it's a bit of a no-brainer in my opinion. Sign up for a BTCC account down below in the comments and you'll be able to access this and also buy and sell crypto with up to a 10% bonus. Now then, back on with the video. DeFiLlama.com is a very useful platform. It allows you to do a bit of decent research into different altcoins and find out a bit about where you're going to make some big gains during this bull market. Because ultimately, altcoins that are downloads have the ability to buy back their token will do well. Now, these fees paid section shows you some very interesting stuff. Shows you USDT is at the top, making lots of money. But USDT is not going anywhere. You're not going to make significant gains on USDT. We all know that. Circle, 6.7. Hyperliquid, $3 million in the past 24 hours. Hyperliquid is a token that I've been investing in for this reason. Effectively, it's a DEX. Unlike lots of other decentralized trading exchanges, Hyperliquid is much easier to use. It's like using Binance or Bybit or BTCC, but in a decentralized manner, where you can keep full custody of tokens and things like that. They also have a significant buyback program on their token, which means that whenever they're making money, they buy their own tokens. And that means that Hyperliquid has one of the best looking altcoin charts out of any token out there right now. Considering how bad the market has been for altcoins over the past 6 months or so, Hyperliquid is putting in a very solid bit of structure here. You can see this is basically a shoulder, this is the head, and this is the shoulder. I would imagine that Hyperliquid is going to be breaking above here and pushing to all-time highs probably much sooner than many people think, which is kind of crazy considering where we're at in the crypto market right now. It has, however, obviously seen kind of a good solid 67% from the absolute bottom. So it might not see necessarily some of the returns that other coins that I'm going to talk about might see. But I've been investing in Hyperliquid. So that takes my list to Bitcoin, Ethereum, a little bit of Render, some Hyperliquid. Now, if we come back to this list, you can kind of go down through. There's a few others that you might want to pay attention to. Now, these aren't necessarily ones that I bought, but you can just check them out. Jupiter is a DEX on Solana. When Solana starts to run, Jupiter tends to do quite well. Let's just have a look at a Jupiter chart while we're at it. Again, all the way down here, okay? Looks horrible. People don't like the look of it, but really, this is making some good returns. I do think that it's going to return to strength at some point whenever the market really starts to get going again. Personally believe that that might not be until kind of April into May time that we really start to see significant gains. Now, personally, I'm not interested in Jupiter because I've already got some Hyperliquid as a DEX, and I've started to branch out into other things. Now, another thing you can do instead of just looking at that fees paid is to then go and click on individual chains. Now, as you're aware, I still hold a lot of SUI. Okay, SUI is, I believe, going to be like the Solana of this bull market. Having been to many events around the world, around kind of Token 2049 and whatever, some of the biggest things that I see, Solana Breakpoint, and also the major SUI events. Now, some of the projects building on top of SUI have been some of the best in the business. Many of the founders behind SUI are the people who are building Libra, which is the blockchain project over on Facebook. Also, some of the individual devs that they've got working for them were the guys who built applications like WhatsApp. So many of the applications and things that you're using, somewhere along the line, people from SUI were working on them. So this is probably one of the most elite dev teams out there. I do think that they have a unique kind of value proposition and that they're building an ecosystem, and that they're not just building an L1, but they're building all the different elements on top of that L1 to give it a full like Web3 ecosystem for the future of the internet to be built upon. And they're also pretty good at communicating that across their kind of marketing and things like that. Now, in terms of kind of revenue and stuff, stablecoin market cap still sitting around 600 mil to 500 mil per day. Fees and a lot of the projects on them have obviously quietened down in this kind of quiet period, but the TVL still remains pretty high around 600 mil. With the market cap currently sat around $3.7 billion, I think for the quality of the project, it's pretty cheap compared to where I think it's going to go. Now, in terms of where it's at right now, it's pretty much in that kind of buy zone area that the last bull market phase back when Donald Trump won the election kind of exploded from. Okay, so you can see there is support in and around this area. This is on a 2-weekly chart, by the way. So this is the last kind of 6 weeks or so. You can see that the bottom seemingly coming in somewhere around here for SUI. I do think that we're going to see better growth at some point. In the past, it ran to all-time highs, around $5.30. I do think that we can see $5.30. I do think that we can probably go beyond that. Still hold SUI, still continue to accumulate it. Now, others I've been paying close attention to, Tau Potenza. I've kind of added a little bit of Tau Potenza. This is a very interesting project as well, seeing a huge amount of development going on, and also has reacted very strongly to this bottoming area here. You can see, basically on the 10th of October, it got to here. We've now got a higher low. We then have even higher lows coming in here. I will add kind of more breakdown around what Tau Potenza and stuff does in the future, because there's a lot to be learned. It's a very complex project, but a very interesting one in the world of AI. I think when AI runs strongly, Tau Potenza tends to run very strongly as well. Passionate community behind it, which is pretty rare for a project that's only been around for a couple of years. But due to the amount of development, partnerships, and revenue generation, I do think that Tau is in a fairly strong position going forward. Now, another thing you can do to continue to find more and more of these coins and really narrow down on the ones that you really are interested in is to just go through the different chains. Like if you look on Ethereum here, you can go see the different projects on Ethereum and the kind of growth that they're having. If you go to Solana, where a lot of the kind of the new projects that people are talking about are doing well, then you can start to look at the different fees paid here. Absolute no-brainer as well. One that got very close to being on my list is Pump Fund. Okay, Pump Fund, $2.69 million per day. What's Pump Fund? It's effectively the platform that people have been launching all of these crappy meme coins from. People have been making tons of money over on pumpfund.com, but Pump Fund themselves have been making an absolute killing. Even in this terrible market, they've been making $2.69 million per day in revenue. If you go and look at the chart for Pump Fund, again, we have this very big swing down, starting to flatten off base. You can see that Pump Fund seemingly bottomed back in December and then kind of come back down to the same kind of bottoming level, giving you a very good place in order to be able to enter back into the market. Now you can see in terms of the run up, 100% in recent gains, then drop back down, but luckily now finds itself back in this zone. Okay, so Pump Fund to me is a bit of an obvious one. We know that we see meme coins doing well, they will continue to do well, and they will do very, very well when the market gets greedy once more. I didn't buy into this one because, to be honest, I'm just trying to like add little bits here. If we continue to kind of range around this zone, then maybe I'll continue to add and buy a few more projects like this. But Pump Fund, bit of a no-brainer. The revenue is absolutely crazy. I do think it's in a very good narrative and people will pay attention to it when the market's right for it. You can go across, look at some of the different DeFi projects, etc. And then you can kind of go down through the chains. If you go to base, then you can go down, you can find a Uniswap, which is an interesting one, but also Aerodrome Finance. Bit of a no-brainer, to be honest. Aerodrome Finance, I don't, again, hold this one. Again, up here, you see Aerodrome Finance, 220k a day. Nothing particularly crazy, but given kind of the market cap of this particular project, it's not a particularly bad one at all. Current market cap sits at like 300 mil. Jumping across to here, you can see that it is in the bottoming range of its previous prices, okay? Every single time it's found itself in this zone, you can see basically what's happened to it over time, okay? You can see basically strong rallies out. Base is an ecosystem, interesting one to watch. Obviously, it's part of Coinbase. Coinbase right now is doing some interesting things with the US government. We'll see whether or not we get the Clarity Act passed soon. That could have strong implications on the growth of Base, Coinbase ecosystem, and Aerodrome being a big DEX over on Base is an interesting one to watch. You see a lot of these different projects like popping up again. Okay, a lot of DEXs, decentralized exchanges, tend to be fairly strong ones to look at because ultimately they provide a service, right? People are trading, people are using those particular ecosystems all the time. If you get to be the biggest DEX on a chain that suddenly takes off, it's a bit of a no-brainer. Okay, Base is an interesting one to be looking at. Down on this, you've got like Arbitrum. You go to Arbitrum and you look at the top fee pays here. You've got Aether, project that I have been very keen on, continue to hold, continue to be adding aggressively into. This is one that I have been buying more recently, $332,000 per day. Market cap of Aether has obviously been driven down. It's around 100 mil. And if you look at the token, it's been absolutely smashed. Now, if you are a project owner, you actually kind of are happy enough to see this basically happen because, again, like I told you, it means that they can start to accumulate. Now, as you see, the kind of like trail to the downside for Aether has definitely slowed down. If we go back to the sort of the start of February here, you can see that while we've seen all this sort of chop more recently, Aether has started to show signs of life once more with money entering back into it. It's also important to note some of the volume pumping into this token right now is the biggest it has ever been. So while it might seem painful and whatever else, some of the buying that's been going on down in and around this zone is absolutely crazy. Considering all the way back, you had that like DAT announcement here, the volume was all the way down here. Okay, so significant shove higher in the volumes, which gives me a lot of confidence despite what we've seen in the charts. Now, other ecosystems you could look at, Avalanche, etc., and there are tons of tokens that could probably do well. It's worth heading across the DeFi Llama and really kind of getting your head into some of these and what's really going to be able to do well in this particular market ahead, because really I believe unless they are kind of like legacy strong projects from years and years ago, you know, like the XRP, Solanas, etc., you really need to find projects, the newer projects that have been doing something substantial. Okay, so anything that may have done well on the chart like 6 months ago or a year ago and you think will do very well again just because it has done in the past, probably isn't enough. You need to go and get down the rabbit hole, start to look into some of these things. Obviously, I've talked about some projects here that I've personally been getting into. If we stay in and around this accumulation zone for longer, I will pick up more different tokens. Obviously, as I said, go and do your own research. Go and check out some of these tokens. If you want to wait for longer and hopefully get in somewhere later in the year, then obviously that's good for you. I don't really mind. Up to you. This is just my opinion. All I'm doing is sharing with you where I think we're at, where I think we go. And remember, even if we chop in and around this zone for more time, okay, ultimately still pretty much in the same position. Really, right now, we could spend a little bit more time in and around this zone. I won't see it as too much of a surprise if we do re-dip down to this kind of bottom zone here and sort of chop around further. I don't really see it as that much of a surprise if we suddenly kind of jump up here and then start chopping around here for longer before we kind of head higher. And that's just where I think we're at right now. Guys, I hope you really enjoyed that video. I know it's a long one. Hopefully it's been useful. If you learned something here, let me know down below in the description. If you made it this far through, do me a favor, just hit that like button, leave a comment, whatever, just leave a full stop. Really helps me out, particularly when the markets are dead quiet like they are right now. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye-bye.